Alrighty, what's good, YouTube? TV Locks here, bringing you guys another video today. Yes, today I've got a very controversial topic for you. Can you be pro-black with a white wife? Okay, now today's clip comes from Dr. Umar Johnson. Dr. Umar Johnson is a very polarizing Pan-African activist. One of his more notable projects right now is that he is working on a boys and girls academy that is going to be focused on some of the deficits in our communities. Okay, so I think he is a great figure to respond to because his opinions are charged, they're emotional and passionate. Okay, and I think they tend to make a lot of noise. They tend to make a lot of noise on the internet. So these views do not reflect my own. I am going to simply respond, and I encourage you to comment below. Okay. Also, if you're looking to submit a topic, there is a ticker underneath. You can see it's got an email address that you can send any topic suggestions to. I will be going through those and reviewing submissions, so you might be able to get featured on this video. All right, let's show the clip. Let's go, Umar.
Women that other white men genuinely do not want. You don't get the top.
Let me restart it. Let me make sure we hear it all.
Black men get the white women that other white men genuinely do not want.
Ooh.
You don't get the top of the line white women. You don't. You get leftovers. Look at most of our celebrities. They did not marry women who came from the richest white families. Black money and white money don't behave the same. New black money will jump on any poor white girl and make her a billionaire, Tiger Woods. Rich white woman, rich white money doesn't operate that way, you see.
I want to ask you something, Dr. Umar. For you, have you ever seen an interracial relationship that was acceptable to you?
No interracial relationship is acceptable because we have too many black women who are unmarried. Black women are the largest population on the planet Earth. If you can't find one in America, get it from Africa. If you can't get it from Africa, go to the Caribbean, go to Canada, go to Europe. Why would a black man need to copulate, build a family with anything other than a black woman when you have so many black women available? It is an exercise in self-hatred. There's no way to get around it.
Man, that's a lot to unpack. That's a lot to unpack. First off, let me start by saying I disagree. All right. I do disagree that it is self-hatred. I think one common theme that you see from the videos that we do and that you find on the internet is that everyone's making generalizations. Everyone is making blanket generalizations. And oftentimes that is a tactic used to make one singular point. You got to use a generalization so that you can make a more impactful point, because obviously to address the nuance would sort of counter what you're trying to communicate. So there's that. Historically, there is context for what he's saying in terms of how we perceive self-hatred, you know, kind of similar to what Kanye used to talk about back in his days, pre-Kardashian era, where he'd say, when you get on, you leave your ass for, he'd leave your ass for a white girl. You know, for a long time in history, black men have looked at the white woman like a social status symbol. They've looked at the inability to have a white woman in the 60s, 70s, 80s, some of them hell even into the 90s. They look at that and they say, well, because of the days when I couldn't, now in the days that I can, I'm going to go get me a white girl and I'm going to show that I have arrived. I'm going to show that I have, amassed this wealth and this social status that allows me to grab one of y'all women, right? That's a sentiment that exists. There's also a growing minority of loud, obnoxious men that will speak negatively about black women in public spaces like YouTube, social media. There's also the media depictions of black women. You look online and what our culture really enjoys consuming oftentimes is not the most beneficial to the perception of our women. I'd argue that it's not as beneficial to the perception of women as well. So there is some context here for the possibility for self-hatred, but the statement that any man who dates outside of their race is exercising some form of self-hatred is just ludicrous. It's ridiculous. I think the problem with Dr. Umar Johnson is that he sort of has a very high and rigid standard, because it appears that he wants pro-blackness to sort of be approached monolithically. It's like he thinks that it should all look the same. And in all reality, this just isn't the case. It can't be the case. Black people are not a monolith. Black liberation is not going to be monolithic either. There are going to be people that are going to focus mainly on the political side. There are going to be people that are focused mainly on, redistributing resources into financial resources into our communities. There's going to be people that are going to focus more majority on, employment. There's going to be people that are focused more on, Blacks in tech. There are pillars that all of us can tackle from different aspects of this big monster that we're all trying to take down. And I think the problem in Black culture oftentimes is that we are more comfortable with looking at ourselves as monoliths. We're very comfortable looking at things in black and white. One common experience that a lot of us will have is if you are a Black person that speaks, with a certain, I don't even know if I would call it a dialect. If you just speak, I don't even call it proper English because, I consider, Ebonics proper English as well. But if you talk with very sharp, pronounced ears and auras, you're perceived to be talking white. Or if you don't wear certain clothes, or maybe let's say you prefer Patagonia over Nike, you might be considered acting white. I think this is something that does often plague our community, and it often plagues our movements. There's so much separation in our movements because we tend to evaluate each other based on, this confirmation bias that we all seem to have. It's like, oh, he's got a white woman. Nope, he can't be pro-Black, unredeemable. Oh, he doesn't like this music. Oh, he's unredeemable. Oh, he likes that. He's unredeemable. It's like we tend to do that. Right? We tend to do that. I can understand a little bit of the historical context of why we do that, but I disagree with it. I think the other pieces that he mentioned were the activity of the Black dollar. Now, this part I do kind of agree with, not via marriage being the issue, but just the fact that, in this country, Black people do have about $1.6 trillion in spending power, right? And when you ask yourself, when you look at our communities, all across the US, you ask yourself, how have we benefited from that spending power? What are we spending that money on, right? It doesn't seem like it's made tremendous impact in our community. It doesn't seem like it's created jobs in our community. Whereas you look at other communities, most notably, you can see, Asian communities. Some people will name, Jewish communities as having a much better ability to not only unify, but to keep that dollar within their communities. You got Chinatowns, and other places across the country that really take pride in, cultivating their own little mini economies. Obviously, we have these in places like, DC, Atlanta, Texas. So we do have representation there as well. But I would say there is a growing opportunity for us to do more. And I'd say the beautiful thing about it is I would argue that we are trending upward in this direction as well. Lastly, I think when we look at unmarried Black women, because that was another thing that he mentioned, I think this is a pretty huge thing. I think it's tough. And I think this is a very complicated issue to address because I think there are multiple factors that are contributing to unmarried Black women. I think you got to look at the incarceration of Black men. I think you have to look at the byproducts of hypergamy. You also have to look at the reality that Black women are doing amazing in entrepreneurial spaces, in college spaces, and then juxtapose that with, Black men and how they're doing. If you are trying to find, if you are a high performing, highly educated Black woman, you may have a harder time finding someone at or above your level, right? There's multiple factors, right? There's multiple factors. There's, again, we'll mention the terrible depictions in the media that are, often give negative depictions and set truth to power to some of the ignorance. There's a lot. I do think it's a little bit unfair to look at Black men, especially, affluent Black men, and say, hey, you got money, so you better go find you a Black woman. I think that's a little tough. I can speak for me personally. I've always been someone who wanted to date a Black woman, but that's been organic and true to my upbringing. My mother and father are from Gaston, Alabama, high school sweethearts. I saw them transcend poverty in a way, and I saw their story in a way that made me want something as closely resembling as possible. I wanted to find a Black woman because I felt like she was going to be have a deep understanding of me, where I come from, and I like the idea of seeing her transcend poverty with her family and those eras and generations before, break her generational curses alongside with me, and us really embracing in the commonality as we repair each other and sort of uplift each other's family, right? I think that is a very real pro-Black initiative. But that's specific to me. I can't say that someone else with a completely different upbringing is going to see a white woman, right? He's automatically going to self-hate her, and he's automatically going to decide that, you know, his family, his community isn't important. I just don't think that that is the case. I think that's a large majority, I'm sorry, a large minority of people that are very vocal that make that seem like that's the case. But it's mostly Black men marrying Black women, and even the ones that aren't seem to still have a very deep passion for doing great work in their communities, right? There are some notable figures out there. I think the guy from Luke Cage, Frederick Douglass himself had a white wife, his second wife. I wish I kept an index of all the people that marry white women in my head. I don't, but there's some out there that are doing some great work. So I just don't think that they should be discounted in that way. In our community, we have a lot of damage and hurt, and I'll say this in landing: we have a lot of damage and hurt. There's a lot of history that we consistently see dividing us, even still to this day. Some negative things that we continue to perpetuate even to this day, things like light skin versus dark skin. We got a lot of healing left to do. But the last thing I think we need to be doing is telling or making Black men that want to do good for their community feel like they need to be treated like second-class pro-Black citizens because they haven't married white women. Like, I also think we do need to do a little bit of the understanding of some of the microaggressions from our women. We need to make sure that we are holding men accountable who are speaking negatively of Black women as well. We need to make sure that we challenge those perspectives. We push back on those perspectives so that we can sort of counteract that and improve relations. Because I don't think it's okay, right? I think one of the things that often derails this conversation is that Black men will look at, Black women dating interracially, and they'll see it as a completely different, there's usually a completely different reception. And while, I see that, I've come to learn that for Black women, and I've kind of had Black women explain this to me, for Black women, because they've gone so long in this country, being marginalized, not being represented, not being shown to be loved, oftentimes it is held as a victory to see them receive love from someone. It seems to be progress just to see them loved by any demographic of people. Whereas, you'll see Black men choosing to opt out, again, basically through that courting process, choosing other women, it can be perceived as different, based on historical context. So yeah. It's a lot, y'all, and it's confusing, but I do think, again, bottom line, we need to work to heal. We need to work to dispel some of this ignorance. We need to work to challenge some of the people that are talking down on Black women. And if you are a pro-Black person, the only thing you need to be held accountable for is the work that you're doing for the community. And that's it. If you're doing positive work for the Black community and you're passionate about that, I'm perfectly fine saying that you are pro-Black, even if you have a white woman. All right. Well, that's where I'm going to land, you guys. I don't want to ramble too much. I've been speaking for about 13 minutes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Please give your feedback. Understand, I'm doing this all in one take, y'all. So this is not something that is rehearsed. This is all off top of the dome. Video quality will improve. I just want to make sure I get in a better habit of engaging you guys and receiving some, comments and feedback and on some of these topics. So yes, it's been TV Locks. Signing out. Hit that.